Soundbooth Theatre presents What the Frost? Santa Saves Christmas, Book 1. Written by Ben Wolfe. Narrated by Gary Furlong. Featuring Andy McKay as Snoot, Annie Ellicott as Evalia, Ryan H. Reed as Father Time, Lucky Byfleet as Shelley Claus, Justin Thomas James as Professor Puffsworth, and Jeff Hayes as Vladimir Putin. Chapter 1. Date: Christmas Eve. Time: 3:24 p.m. Samoan time. Location: North Pole. A shriek snapped Santa out of his slumber, and he jerked upright. His heavy, stocking-clad feet hit the floor, and his girth spilled out of the bed as he stood. A woman's voice? No. It belonged to Crandall, one of Santa's elves and the North Pole's stablemaster. Santa clapped his hands twice, and the LED lights on the ceiling gleamed to life. The door flung open, and Shelley Claus, Santa's wife, stormed in. Her evergreen nightgown clung to her in all the right places, but she wore a mask of terror.
Nick! You've got to come now! It's Crandall!
Ah! Santa!
Santa rubbed the sleep from his eyes. He glanced at the clock on his nightstand. 3:25 p.m. Samoan time. 14 hours until his first delivery. But he'd awakened 35 minutes early. Rather, Crandall's shrieks had awakened him.
No, Nick!
Shelley insisted.
He's hurt bad.
Santa's heart pounded faster as he lumbered past Shelley and into their expansive living room. Thick pine logs formed towering brown walls, and multicolored Christmas lights lined the festive upper perimeter of the ceiling. Crandall lay in the center of the living room, surrounded by an expanding pool of blood on the lacquered pinewood floor. In place of his left hand, a red stump oozed blood. Crandall clutched his wrist with his right hand, moaning and writhing on the floor. Santa rushed over to him. "Jumping gingerbread! What happened, Crandall?" Crandall shook his head. His voice sounded even higher pitched than usual.
Something's wrong, boss. Something bad.
Shelley, call Gypswitch. Tell him to bring his medical bag.
Already did?
Centuries of experience kicked in, and Santa said, "Then get some towels. We need to stop the bleeding." Shelley disappeared into the bedroom. Crandall moaned again. His voice shook as he said,
It was blitzing. He's lost it. Got a hold of my hand. Done chopped it right off.
"What?" Santa recoiled. "He's the jolliest of them all. Did you provoke him?" Crandall shook his head, and tears rolled down his cheeks.
He just bit me, Santa. He just did it on his own. He's become an antlered menace.
In close to a century of serving in Santa's sleigh team, Blitzen had never displayed any aggression whatsoever. Yet now Crandall lay in Santa's living room, bleeding out on the floor, naming Blitzen the culprit.
He ate my hand, Santa. He ate it!
Santa shook his head. Even the suggestion of it twisted his insides sour. "That's absurd, Crandall. Reindeer are herbivorous." Crandall slung a slew of profanity in several languages. Santa would have warned him about landing on the naughty list for it, but he couldn't blame him given the circumstances. Shelley returned with an armful of white towels embroidered with Christmas trees around the edges and embellished with gold and red trim. They were Santa's favourites, so of course she'd chosen them specifically. He shot her a glare. With not even a hint of regret, she fired one back at him as she crouched next to Crandall and wrapped the first of them around his bloody stump. The fabric reddened to a deep Christmas crimson immediately. Like Crandall's hand, those towels would never be the same again.
Get your head out of the snow and listen to me, Santa. Blitzen bit off my hand and ate it. He kept coming after me, but I ran and locked him in the stable. That means...
Horror gripped Santa's very soul, and he barely managed to stifle a gasp. "He's in there with the rest of them." Wide-eyed, Santa bolted upright. He hurried over to the closet, pulled out his white rabbit fur travelling coat, the heaviest coat he owned, and tossed it onto the nearest kitchen chair. He looked at Shelley. "I've got to handle this."
No kidding.
She said. Her voice flat. Santa shot her another glare. Crandall moaned, and Shelley wrapped one of the towels around his shoulders. The expanding pool of blood reached the polar bear skin rug on the floor in front of their walrus leather sofa and stained the edge of it scarlet. Santa lamented the damage, but he had more pressing concerns. If Blitzen had truly gone mad on Christmas Eve, no less, there was little time to intervene. He grabbed Cherry, his silver 12-gauge shotgun from the hooks above the fireplace mantel. He blew the dust off the top of its 3 barrels, ran his fingers over its engraved cherry wood stock, and polished it all to a quick holiday shine. He popped it open, confirmed the 3 shells inside, and clanked it shut. He leaned Cherry against the doorpost and tugged on his boots. "I'm going. Are you—"
We'll be fine.
Shelley snapped.
Gypswitch will be here soon. Just go and take care of it.
Santa's jaw tightened, but he pulled on his travelling coat, clasped his black leather belt around it, opened the front door to his house, and stepped into the howling landscape. Arctic winters meant no sunshine and bitter cold, and they lasted from October clear into early March. He tightened his grip on Cherry and squinted into the darkness. Icy wind whipped tiny granules of snow that stung his cheeks, nose, and forehead. Were it not for his home's well-lit exterior and the LED lampposts that lined his path, he would have been all but blind. Even though cold temperatures couldn't harm him, one of the benefits of being Santa Claus, he still hadn't braved a blizzard like this for decades. He wouldn't have tonight either, but he couldn't ignore an elf missing a hand and claims of a carnivorous reindeer loose in his stable, especially on Christmas Eve. He unlatched his fingers from the shotgun and scratched under his thick white beard. Then he checked for his bowie knife on his belt. It still hung there, where he'd left it. Just in case. Snow crunched under Santa's black boots with each hurried step toward the old wooden stable. He shifted his travelling coat on his shoulders, the same coat he wore when delivering presents and making public appearances at shopping malls all over the world. He stopped at the stable doors and pressed his ear against the wooden slats, listening. Even amid the roar of the Arctic wind around him, he still heard a low growl, almost a moan, earthy and primitive, emanating from inside the stable, followed by a chorus of grunts. Santa cursed, though he knew he shouldn't have. What right did he have to hold others accountable when he so often slipped up himself? He clamped down on the door handle and pulled, and the door hinges creaked amid the animal noises. He stepped inside and left the majority of the blizzard behind him. Some of the fluorescent tube lights that stretched along the center of the ceiling flickered, and others didn't give off any light at all. A few hung down and waved with the frigid wind that flowed into the stable from behind Santa. Of the 5 stalls on the left and 6 on the right, each of their half doors remained shut but 2. Donna's and Blitzen's. They loomed at the opposite end of the stable, in the dark, with no alternate escape route. Of course. The lights flickered again, and Santa caught a glimpse of something smeared along the wooden floor, intermingled with straw and hay. Blood. Maybe Crandall's, maybe not. A rush of wind buffeted Santa's coat from behind, and a wave of snow streamed into the stable. With another curse, Santa pulled the stable door shut behind him, and the light shining from his house and the pathway disappeared. As bad as being enclosed with a crazed and now carnivorous 400-pound reindeer would be, letting Blitzen out alive meant danger to everyone Santa cared about. He couldn't let that happen. That's why he'd brought Cherry along. Santa kept his finger close to the trigger, but not on it. Not yet. The stable lacked the usual snorts and huffs he'd grown accustomed to over the last several centuries. He glanced at each stall as he passed, but saw no movement in any of them. That worried him the most. Usually the reindeer's antlers, common to males and females alike, protruded above the half doors that enclosed each stall, but none did this time. Was he already too late? Upon closer inspection, blood and gore tainted the floors, walls, and doors of the first 4 rows of stalls. Santa's arms quivered, and a lump clogged his throat, but he moved forward nonetheless. This is bad. Very, very bad. To his right, in the last stall before Donna's, lay the mangled carcass of a large beast, motionless in the hay. Vixen, his favourite. She had always lit the way for the rest of them. Worse still, A smaller four-legged form lay next to her. Vixen's calf. Santa had hoped the calf could take his mother's place someday soon. He counted them down mentally. Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid. All of them dead. If Donner's dead too, and Blitzen's the cause, then... He cursed again. This was even worse than Crandall had said. When Santa reached the final pair of stalls, one right across from the other, he raised his shotgun, ready for whatever may come. He leaned forward and peered into Donner's stall first, a 10-by-12 compartment now shrouded in darkness. He couldn't be sure because of the heavy shadows, but he thought he perceived something was in there, laying on the bed of hay. Santa whirled around. A dark mass slammed into him. Cherry flashed with 2 deafening bangs in quick succession, and sticky warmth splattered onto Santa's face. He landed in a mound of hay in Donner's stall. The mass dropped beside him, now a headless, reindeer-sized corpse with its neck eviscerated and pulsing dark liquid. He noticed a name embroidered in its leather bridle. Blitzen. Santa moaned, and his heart dropped into his churning stomach. Blitzen had become a monster, and now he lay dead beside Santa. Whatever malady had seized Blitzen had all but ruined Christmas this year. What a nightmare! But hopefully Donner had survived, and could pull the sleigh on his own. It wasn't an impossible feat, but it wouldn't be easy either. Santa wiped Blitzen's gore from his face and growled at the abundance of red stains on his formerly white coat. Ruined. But at least he was Santa's heart leaped up into his throat. Still seated, he twisted around. A pair of glowing yellow eyes emerged from the darkness of Donner's stall, along with a bloodied snout, reddened teeth accentuated by receding purple gums, and a pair of long, multi-pronged antlers. Donner, but not anymore. Something else, dark and sinister, somehow dead, yet still living just like Blitzen. The undead reindeer snarled and lurched forward. Santa unloaded Cherry's 3rd barrel. The blast sheared off Donner's front legs and dug deep lacerations into his torso. But it didn't kill him. Instead, what remained of his corrupted head and torso rammed into Santa's chest, knocking him flat on his back. Donner groaned again, and in spite of the damage, he actually slithered toward Santa's face. Impossible! Santa couldn't move. Even without his forelegs, Donner still weighed too much for Santa to get out from under him. Santa braced his left forearm under Donner's blood-stained chin to keep the beast's bloody, gnashing teeth from reaching his face. Shotgun out of ammo. Dropped it anyway. Santa's jaw tightened. Only one thing left to do. Santa skinned his bowie knife with his free hand and plunged it into Donner's glowing left eye. A throaty moan gurgled from Donner's throat. Then he convulsed once and slumped next to Blitzen. Dead. Again. Too close. Far too close. Santa lay still in the hay, sucking in breath after labored breath. Too fat. Slow. Sluggish. He pushed himself up and surveyed the scene, including his coat, now thoroughly stained red. Worse yet, all his reindeer were dead, the entire sleigh team. Santa needed at least 1 reindeer to make his Christmas deliveries. He'd done it with 1 before, ages ago, but he couldn't do it with 0. What's more, in this blizzard, he wouldn't be able to see anything without Vixen's light. That compounded the nightmare. How could he possibly salvage Christmas from the wreckage of 8 dead reindeer? He had to figure something out, or children around the world would wake up Christmas morning to nothing but empty space under their trees, and adults around the world would tear out their hair trying to deal with it. As Santa walked toward the stable door, a faint pink light emanated from Vixen's stall. Santa's heart rate tripled, and he raised his knife, bristling for another attack. He really should have brought more shotgun shells with him. Instead, a young reindeer stepped out of the darkness from beyond Vixen's body. His antlers amounted to little more than nubs atop his head, but he was alive, fully alive. Santa lowered his knife. Vixen's calf had survived after all, and he looked healthy, strong even. He should be, after all the flight training Crandall had put him through this last year. Rudolph's nose glowed red, just like his mother's had. Santa smirked at him. It would be a long shot, But maybe he could save Christmas after all.
Come with me, little fella. We've got work to do.
Chapter 2. Within minutes, Santa's entire workforce had assembled in the workshop, save for Crandall and Gypswitch, obviously. Shelley hadn't yet emerged from the house either. Rudolph lay in the corner on a makeshift bed of fabric scraps and fluff, discarded from the stuffed animal department, but at least he was safe. The elves, most of them clad in their Yuletide pajamas with heavy coats over top and wearing curl-toed slippers, bustled and chattered while Santa peeled his coat from his body. It was ruined. He hung it on a candy cane-shaped coat rack that had several smaller candy canes sprouting from the top as coat hooks. Fiddlesticks, the elf who ran the workshop, passed Santa a G.I. Joe beach towel, and Santa proceeded to wipe the blood, gore, and chips of reindeer bone from his face and beard. Bibadoo, Fiddlesticks's right-hand elf, held a mirror high over his head for Santa to use while cleaning himself, but he was only 3.5 feet tall, so Santa still had to crouch.
You're gonna need to take a serious shower, boss.
Bibadoo shifted under his scratchy wool coat, which blinked with multicolored Christmas lights. Unlike all the other elves, he slept without a shirt on, so when he'd gotten the call to show up at the workshop, he'd rushed over with only his coat. At least he wore pajama pants when he went to bed.
Tell me about it.
Santa rubbed a red spot off his forehead and huffed. A shower was the least of his concerns right now. Fiddlesticks glanced over his silk-clad shoulder. He was wearing silvery grey silk pajamas from Brooks Brothers, but due to his diminutive stature, they were actually women's pajamas with shorts for the bottoms.
They're all here. Want me to quiet them down?
Oh, no.
Santa shook his head.
I'll do it.
The workshop door opened, and Shelley entered in all her beautiful, vindictive glory. Red stains tainted her evergreen nightgown at the knees and painted her hands, but her blonde hair and face remained clean. Her eyes, blue and unforgiving like an ice shelf plummeting into the frigid waters of the Arctic Ocean, fixed on Santa's face. But instead of registering shock, she just sighed and shook her head. Santa met her in the middle of the workshop.
How's
Crandall will live.
She said.
He's in bad shape now, but Gypswitch says he'll survive. When I left, they were already joking about whether to attach a hook or a harpoon spearhead to his stump.
Santa grinned and nodded.
Yes, he'll be fine.
She motioned over his shoulder with a raise of her chin.
Is that your coat?
Santa didn't bother looking back.
I know. It's ruined.
Even though the cold couldn't harm Santa, he still got cold when temperatures dropped. The idea of making deliveries without that coat, if he'd be able to make any at all, sounded as miserable as chewing a bag full of Christmas chocolates with their tinfoil wrapping still on.
It was the warmest coat I had, and with the blizzard—
You,
Shelley pointed to Bibadoo, and he snapped to attention.
bring me Santa's coat.
To Santa, she said,
I'll do what I can. I know it's supposed to be as white as virgin snow, but don't count on it ever looking like that anymore.
Bibadoo retrieved it for her, and Santa forced a smile. He really did appreciate her efforts, but the disdain behind her words and in her icy blue eyes still grated on him.
Thank you.
Shelley didn't respond. She just turned around, walked out of the workshop, and slammed the door behind her. Rudolph's head jerked upright. He gave a sharp snort, then he lay back down on the pile of scraps. Santa wiped his face with his towel again and turned to Fiddlesticks.
Am I presentable?
Fiddlesticks grimaced.
Not remotely.
Santa glanced down at Bibadoo's mirror, which now leaned against the wall. Red still tinged his otherwise white beard, and he hadn't cleared all of the dried blood from his cheeks and forehead. His nose was always some shade of pink or red, though, so that didn't look any different.
I don't care. Call it Christmas cheer or chalk it up to me being extra jolly or whatever. It's not like I'm riding down 6th Avenue in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. We have to get moving.
He pushed past Fiddlesticks and approached the crowd of elves gathered in the open middle of the workshop, an area usually reserved for carts zooming back and forth loaded with toys. The elves at the front of the crowd noticed him, and their attention rippled throughout the crowd as the rest of them took notice. They all gawked at Santa, and he tried his best to ignore their shocked expressions at his appearance.
Is that blood?
One of the elves in the front row muttered.
My friends and comrades.
Santa stopped. He hated that word, comrades. He'd started saying it out of habit several decades ago, mostly thanks to the Soviets. But ever since the Berlin Wall came down, he'd made a concerted effort to avoid the word. Some habits were hard to break, though.
My friends and fellow workers in Christmas, he continued. Our situation is grave. I'd like to tell you that I'll be able to get this year's haul of toys out to the world in time for Christmas morning, but I can make no such promise.
The elves' chatter increased, and their heads twisted back and forth as they looked at each other.
Earlier tonight, 2 of the reindeer sleigh team went mad with some sort of illness.
Santa hesitated. How much information was too much information? He exhaled a heavy breath and decided they would find out anyway, one way or another. Crandall couldn't hide his missing hand forever.
They killed all of the other reindeer, leaving young Rudolph here as the lone survivor.
Rudolph's head perked up at the sound of his name, and his nose emitted a soft red glow. He blinked amid the ensuing elf chatter throughout the workshop. Then his light faded as he lay his head back down. Santa held up his hands and the chatter stopped.
With a fully trained, full-grown reindeer, I could probably deliver the world's toys and meet our deadlines. But Rudolph is neither of those things. He will need help. Unfortunately, none of the other young reindeer have undergone advanced flight training yet. I now recognize that's a severe oversight, but taking any of them out tonight, especially in this weather, is simply not an option. So now I've come to you, the world's finest creative and scientific minds, to help me come up with a solution. How do we create enough propulsion to get the sleigh, the entire world's Christmas morning deliveries, and me airborne?
This time no one chatted or talked. They all just stared at him. Santa frowned.
Seriously? You don't have any ideas?
An elf named Shabalap raised a mitten-covered hand 3 rows back.
We could just have FedEx deliver the packages.
The entire group of elves turned toward Shabalap, brandished plastic candy canes, and began beating him.
Ah, Dad, okay, take it back!
He yelled, trying to shield himself with his arms. The other elves stopped whacking him, but one of them gave him an extra wallop atop his head for good measure.
Any other ideas?
Santa asked. He got nothing from them in response.
You're a team of brilliant scientists, engineers, and creatives. Get to work on some ideas. I'll be back in an hour, and I want a solid plan of action by then.
Santa, even if we could figure out a solution by then, there's no way you'd have enough time to get around the world for every delivery with only one juvenile reindeer.
Fiddlesticks protested.
Leave that to me.
Santa faced the group of elves again.
Christmas depends on you. Get to work.
Fiddlesticks and Bibadoo threaded into the crowd of elves, and they immediately dispersed into frantic groups amid the ruckus of more chattering. Santa left them to their devices. Either way, he had to clean up properly. Reindeer guts and blood didn't exactly scream, "Merry Christmas!" And before long, they'd start to stink of decay. So he headed back to his house to get cleaned up. Santa emerged from the shower red from scrubbing his body clean, perhaps even redder than the blood itself, but at least he'd gotten it off. He twisted the last of his favourite Christmas tree-edged towels into a turban around his head and fastened an older blue snowflake-themed towel around his waist. He checked himself over in the sprawling bathroom mirror and picked away the last vestiges of reindeer blood from his eyebrows and moustache. Then he headed into the bedroom for a fresh pair of long underwear. He stopped short at the sight of a Victoria's Secret catalogue with curled corners and well-worn edges lying on the bed. Some busty brunette model with a Rachel from Friends haircut adorned the cover, clad in a green number with fluffy white trim at the tops of her brassiere cups. The look in her green eyes had always captivated him, and that was part of the problem. The bedroom door creaked open, and Shelley stood there with her arms folded. A trap?
I thought you threw this away a long time ago, Santa said.
There was a time when I thought you had as well.
She had changed from her soiled evergreen nightgown into jeans and a tight-fitting red knitted sweater adorned with dancing snowmen. Their carrot noses were orange light-up Christmas lights. A pang of guilt stabbed Santa's gut, but he'd long since acclimated to concealing his feelings about the issue from Shelley.
I don't know why you'd keep it.
I could say the same of you.
Santa's jaw tensed, then it released. He pulled the turban towel from his head and began drying his long white hair.
I certainly don't have a use for it, and I don't know why tonight of all nights you'd bring it out.
Just reminding you of our second most important anniversary.
Santa glowered at her.
Even for you. That's cold.
Her blue eyes were like ice.
We're in the North Pole, Nick. Everything's cold.
I really don't have time for this.
He picked up the catalogue without looking at it and tossed it at her feet.
We agreed to put the past behind us. If you're not going to throw it out, leave it there, and I'll handle it later.
You sure about that?
Shelley stepped over it and started toward him. Despite her ire, she still looked beautiful. That dancing snowman's sweater hugged her idyllic curves as well as anything ever had. He'd met her early on Christmas morning during one of his deliveries to Sweden, about 800 years ago. Not long after that, they'd started dating. Within a year, they'd married, and she became immortal like him through their union. With the exception of the last few decades, she hadn't changed much. He still adored her, but living with her since the mid-90s had grated on their relationship and on him. All because of that worn-out old Victoria's Secret catalogue. Santa glanced at the catalogue, but that's all the attention he gave it.
Of course I'm sure.
I don't trust you anywhere near it.
Then why'd you leave it on our bed?
I was testing you.
Santa wanted to rip into her for entrapment, but he held his tongue. Instead, he said,
And did I pass?
Marginally.
So we can move on from this like we decided in the mid-90s?
Shelley folded her arms.
You decided we would move on. I'm still mad at you.
Well, that much is clear, yes.
Santa peeled the towel from around his waist, and Shelley averted her gaze.
Oh, relax. You've seen my Yule log and chestnuts before.
That catalogue has seen them too.
Santa slammed his fist on the nightstand, and the snow globe on top of it flurried into life.
I've made dozens of attempts at reconciliation with you. I've brought you presents from faraway lands, cut back on my Christmas cookie consumption, passed off more of my responsibilities to the likes of Fiddlesticks and others so I could spend more time with you.
I know.
Yet you keep throwing this one incident in my face, one measly snowflake-sized incident.
Santa pointed at her.
And on tonight of all nights, I've got one functioning reindeer who can barely fly, much less pull a sleigh loaded with the entire world's toys, and you're badgering me about a decades-old grudge? Not tonight, Shelley.
You've delayed it for decades, Nick.
I haven't delayed anything.
Santa sat on the bed and pulled on a fresh pair of thermal underwear.
I just detailed my many attempts at reconciliation, and those only accounted for a fraction of what I've done to make it up to you.
I don't give two jingles about your half-hearted gifts and gestures.
Shelley snapped.
Half-hearted? Since when have I ever done anything half-heartedly?
Santa stood and grabbed a thermal undershirt from his dresser. Since his low-carb diet began, he'd shrunk from a 3XL down to an XXL.
I'm Santa Claus, for frost's sake!
That's exactly the issue, Nick. You think you can do no wrong. You think the naughty list doesn't apply to you, but you did do something wrong.
Santa bristled. He'd done virtually everything he could possibly think of to make this right, but she'd refused to accept any means of penance from him. He resorted to the first lie he'd ever told her.
I was researching.
She held up her hand.
Don't give me that load of hollyhock again.
I was.
He doubled down.
I recognize that it hurt you, but that's what...
I guarantee that none of the women you were ogling in that catalogue were on your nice list.
Santa waved his hand at her and pushed his head through the undershirt collar. The brief moment when she disappeared from his vision thanks to the shirt covering his head marked the first bit of relief he'd felt all afternoon. It faded when his eyes found hers again.
I don't know what you want from me.
I want an apology. I always have.
Santa shook his head. He'd lied to her once, and he wasn't about to do it again.
I refuse to apologize for something I'm not sorry for.
Oh, I know.
Without another word, Shelley turned and stormed out of the room, leaving both him and the Victoria's Secret catalogue behind. He stared at it, then he stomped after her with only one sock on and the other still in his hand.
Shelley! Shelley!
She turned back the third time he called her name and met him face to face.
I don't want to hear another word out of your mouth unless you lead with I'm and sorry.
Santa's breath caught in his throat. Frustration boiled up under every inch of his skin, and he soon found himself sweating beneath his thermal underwear. Why was she making everything so difficult? It only made him clamp his mouth shut so no words could escape. Shelley nodded, shook her head, scoffed, and headed into the kitchen.
Your hot cocoa's on the stove. Get your own candy cane to stir it with.
She rounded a corner, entered one of the guest rooms, and slammed the door behind her so hard that the sleigh bells mounted above the front door jingled. Santa grunted. He had to put this out of his mind. The last thing he needed tonight was a tiny, decades-old infraction haunting him amid everything else going on. He plopped down in one of the kitchen chairs, tugged on his other sock, and then headed to the stove for his hot cocoa. As Santa dipped the ladle into the steaming pot, a knock on the front door jarred him from his thoughts.
Come in!
The front door swung open, and a separate set of sleigh bells jingled. Bibidoo popped his head inside, still wearing only his light-up wool coat, pajama pants, and boots.
Sorry to disturb you ahead of schedule, boss, but we've come up with an idea.
Chapter 3. Back in the workshop and fully dressed, Santa scratched his head. His hair still felt damp, and the frigid trek from his house to the workshop probably hadn't done his scalp any favours, but time was of the essence. More concerning, though, was the haphazard drawing now before him. It appeared to be a giant slingshot atop a snowy cliff scribbled onto one of the shop's whiteboards.
You can't be serious.
Santa eyed Fiddlesticks, who shrugged his silk-clad shoulders.
This is a holly jolly death trap.
Well, you said you wanted a plan,
Fiddlesticks said.
This is a plan.
I wanted a good plan. This looks like something Wile E. Coyote came up with. It's as likely to get me killed as it is to get me off the ground.
Santa facepalmed himself.
You all know I'm only immortal unless something kills me. Willingly stepping into a giant slingshot on the edge of a cliff seems like a surefire way to achieve that.
Actually, that's supposed to be a mountain,
Pellywiggle added. He oversaw the entire boys' division, including toys, clothes, and electronics. Glitter perpetually dotted his red beard, and though it gave the elf a festive look, Santa couldn't imagine trying to eat with glitter everywhere all the time, or making toys, or doing anything, really.
That way you'll have enough time in the air for Rudolph to get going.
Santa raised an eyebrow at him.
I'm guessing this was your idea?
Pellywiggle's brown eyes brightened. Then he blinked the joy away as he realized Santa wasn't trying to give him credit for a good reason.
Not just my idea. I mean, I had help. I told him it wouldn't work, boss.
Wismelda, the head of the girls' division, stepped forward. She wore a green elf hat with a white poof on the end and a white lab coat embroidered with swirly silver snowflakes. Of everyone in the room, she looked the most professional, as if she'd somehow had time to get ready before coming over to the workshop. She looked at Santa through her thick glasses, also silver and snowflake-shaped. She changed eyewear styles faster than Barbie changed shoes, though Santa noted that probably wasn't coincidental.
It's not scientifically sound. Not remotely. This is coming from the elf who designed the Easy Bake Oven. Do you know how many kids burn their fingers in that death trap?
Pellywiggle fired back.
5.
Wismelda tilted her head.
Out of 16 million units, 5 moronic children burn their fingers. 5. That's 0.0000003125%. Exactly how many people have been injured by the trampoline, Pellywiggle?
Pellywiggle's face reddened to match his glittery beard, and he pointed at her.
That's not fair. The trampoline is bouncy family fun for all ages, and everyone knows that parental supervision is strongly recommended.
She cast a smug grin at him.
YouTube says differently, I think.
Enough, both of you!
Santa stepped between them.
Wismelda, do you have anything productive to add to the conversation? You can niggle Pellywiggle some other time.
Just that if you launched off of that mountain in Pellywiggle's slingshot, you'd be more likely to crash into the next nearest mountain than take flight.
But you don't have any alternatives.
Oh, I don't have one, but I know someone who might.
Who? She pushed her snowflake glasses higher up on her pointy nose.
Krampus.
Absolutely not.
Santa shook his head.
He has the resources and the power to help.
She pressed.
Why wouldn't you at least?
You know precisely why, Wismelda. I'll not entertain any more of this conversation from you or anyone else. It's Christmas Eve. It's a time for peace, joy, and goodwill for all mankind. Krampus represents none of those things. Perhaps he never did.
Flashes of blood, fire, and the screams of children flickered in Santa's memory. He drowned them in glad tidings and memories of Christmas letters from countless children over the years.
We will speak no more of him,
Santa finally said.
Understood?
Wismelda nodded, but she gave a long sigh as well.
If you have nothing more productive to add, then I must ask you all to return to work. I'm not ready to give up on Christmas this year, nor should any of you be.
Santa?
A green-haired elf near the fringe of the crowd spoke up.
What about...
His comrade, there's that stupid word again, nudged him in his ribs and he stopped.
Speak up, Harpic. Now's not the time to be shy.
Santa eyed Harpic's friend.
And you let him speak freely, Quinaglow.
I was just going to suggest... What about Doodle Snoot?
Santa's eyebrows rose. He hadn't even considered that Doodle Snoot might have a solution.
Absolutely not.
Fiddlesticks echoed Santa's stance on Krampus.
He's a no-good drunk, and we don't need his kind of negative energy in here. He's also a technical genius,
Harpic said.
I know, I've seen it firsthand. I worked under him in our research and development division, before he fell off the radio flyer wagon, that is. Not a chance, Harpic.
Fiddlesticks shook his hands over his head.
Doodle Snoot lost his job for a reason. I'm not about to bring him back here and risk...
Bring him in,
Santa said. Fiddlesticks turned and blinked at Santa.
Boss, you do realize he urinated on an entire batch of Twilight dolls before we could escort him from the workshop, don't you?
Sounds like a waste of good urine, if you ask me.
Santa grinned and winked at Fiddlesticks.
Bring him in, Fiddlesticks. If he has something to offer, perhaps we can make Christmas happen this year after all.
Fiddlesticks harumphed, but he nodded.
Bibidoo, make the call.
As for the rest of you, keep working on solutions.
Santa pointed to Harpic and Quinaglow.
You two, come here.
They approached. Quinaglow tried to mat down his substantial case of bedhead and started to apologize, but Santa hushed him.
I'm not mad at you, Quinaglow. You were trying to preserve the integrity of our work. For that, I thank you.
Santa looked between Harpic's round head and Quinaglow's square jaw.
Both of you have done some work for Crandall in the stable, haven't you?
They glanced at each other and nodded.
It's been a few decades, but yes.
Good. I need you to outfit Rudolph with a harness that fits his smaller frame and prepare him for flying later tonight. Can you do that?
Of course, boss.
Quinaglow's smile glowed almost as much as his gold pajama pants.
We'll hop right to it.
As the two elves scampered toward Rudolph, Santa felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Bibidoo, who'd brought over a step stool and climbed it so he could reach high enough.
Sorry, boss. I called 3 times. First time he answered. When I told him who it was and where I was calling from, he hung up. Haven't been able to get a hold of him since.
Bibidoo shrugged and looked at Fiddlesticks, then at Santa again.
What would you like me to do now?
They didn't have time to dawdle. If Doodle Snoot wouldn't cooperate, they'd have to go to him.
Get a couple of Arctic cats ready,
Santa said.
We're going to his place.
Santa's snowmobile rumbled into a grove of evergreens, coasting to a stop outside a small log cabin, and he pulled his reflective green ski goggles from his eyes. A soft orange glow emanated from its windows, but unlike the dozens of other homes they'd passed on the way, this one lacked any semblance of Christmas cheer. No lights, coloured or otherwise, hung from its exterior or dotted any of the snowy conifers around it. No plastic candy canes or frosty inflatables, or nativity scenes sat on the front yard. No decorations whatsoever adorned the property, unless the wooden crate of discarded scrap metal next to the front door counted. All around them, the blizzard continued to rage. But Santa refused to let weather slow him down. It never had before. He looked over his shoulder and shouted into the wind.
"You're sure we didn't end up somewhere in northern Canada? This doesn't look promising."
He never was big on the Christmas spirit, Santa.
Fiddlesticks dismounted from the snowmobile he shared with Bibidoo. They'd both snagged snowsuits prior to jumping on the snowmobiles, but Santa hadn't bothered. Yes, the cold and snow had been annoying, but he was fine.
This is the address.
Bibidoo checked the scrap of paper he held in his mitten.
1364 Tinsel Lane, Southwest.
He's big on eggnog, right?
Santa pulled his goggles off his face and tucked them into his shirt pocket.
He always said, "Got booze, can't lose."
Fiddlesticks scoffed and shook his head. Clumps of snow tumbled off his hood and onto his tiny shoulders.
That should be some indication of his affinity for the drink.
"Well, there's no sense in waiting out here in the cold."
Santa dismounted his snowmobile and brushed as much of the snow out of his beard as he could.
"Let's see if he's home, shall we?"
Santa led them to the front door and knocked, despite the "No Solicitors" sign nailed to it. He waited, but no one came to the door. The box of discarded scrap metal caught his eye, and he bent over for a closer look. Scrap metal lined the top, all right, but Santa spotted bundles of discarded Christmas lights under it, along with other holiday paraphernalia, plus a bunch of bent nails and old rusted hooks. Santa turned back to Fiddlesticks.
"How long ago did you fire him?"
Last week,
Fiddlesticks replied.
He staggered into work 3 hours late, his breath reeking of eggnog. He kept holding mistletoe over the female employees and trying to kiss them. The world's most festive sexual harassment case was blossoming before our very eyes. I had to do something.
"So the wound is fresh. Makes sense that he'd rid himself of reminders of his old job. You did the right thing, Fiddlesticks. Don't worry about it."
Santa knocked a second time, but still no one came to the door. He raised his hand to knock a third time and heard an electronic whir to his right. Santa looked up and saw the orange light from the snow in front of the house reflecting on a circular piece of glass. A camera embedded into one of the wooden logs at the door. He stared at it and waved, but it didn't move.
"I know you're in there, Doodle Snoot. Please let us in. We need to talk."
An intercom squealed to life and crackled with a gruff voice.
What do you want?
"I have a problem that you may be able to help me resolve."
I'm not helping you with anything.
The intercom crackled and squealed again, and it clicked off. Santa noticed a series of tiny holes in one of the logs under the camera, the source of the sound from the intercom. He leaned toward it.
"From what I hear, I could use an elf of your intellect for this specific problem. You come highly recommended."
A pause lingered in the frigid air. Santa started to say something else, but the voice from the intercom interrupted him.
Who's recommending me?
"Harpic. He said he worked under you in R&D for a while. Said you're brilliant."
Another pause.
He's not wrong.
The voice said.
"Why don't you let us in, and we can talk about it?"
Not him.
Santa leaned away from the intercom and glanced back.
Him who?"
Twiddledix. I don't want him in my house. Frankly, I don't ever want to see him again.
"I won't argue that you're mad at him, Doodle Snoot, and I believe you have reason to bear a grudge against him. But we can't just leave him outside with no warmth or protection from the elements."
Why not?
The intercom chirped.
That's essentially what he did to me.
He's drunk again. I can hear it in his voice,
Fiddlesticks said from behind. Without looking at Fiddlesticks, Santa held up his hand to silence him. Into the intercom he said,
"But you're a better elf than he is. I promise he'll stand just barely inside and he won't say a word."
More silence. Then,
He'd better not.
"So may we come inside?"
Santa asked.
Yeah, fine. I'll unlock the door.
A triple-toned buzz sounded and Santa pushed the door open and stepped inside. He stomped and wiped his boots on a grey snow mat and stepped aside so Bibidoo and Fiddlesticks could enter as well. The home's interior more or less matched its exterior except for a well-crafted stone fireplace in the middle of the small living room. No pictures hung on the walls, But Santa could tell some had until just recently. Lighter-coloured rectangle shapes adorned the walls where pictures used to hang, and a variety of empty frames occupied a box near the fireplace. A quaint kitchen, complete with fancy but small stainless steel appliances, sat to the right of the fireplace. A sole recliner, probably made of walrus leather, faced the fireplace, but it seemed too far back from the fireplace for anyone sitting on it to glean any warmth from the fire. The fireplace cast a soft, warm glow throughout the home, the only source of light aside from a small kitchen light over the sink. A rectangular green rug bridged the gap between the recliner and the fireplace, and a stack of vintage Playboy magazines lay beside the recliner. Santa huffed. If Shelley had been mad about the Victoria's Secret catalogue, she would have just killed him if she'd caught him looking at a Playboy. To the left of the fireplace, 2 doors led, most likely, to a bedroom and a bathroom. Another door in the back, situated between the kitchen and the fireplace, led somewhere else, but Santa didn't know where. Bibadoo looked around.
Where is he?
Probably passed out in a corner somewhere,
Fiddlesticks muttered. Santa shot him a glare and Fiddlesticks shrugged. A hydraulic hiss sounded, and the green rug in front of the recliner retracted, along with a section of the floor beneath it. Harsh white-blue light, a stark contrast to the warm aura from the fire, pierced upward from the opening. As if rising on an escalator, a shiny bald head emerged from the opening, followed by a small elf-sized body. He wore black goggles with reflective red-orange lenses that reminded Santa of a sunset in Bora Bora. A bushy beard, more pepper than salt, started as sideburns near his pointed ears and ended in a triangle about 3 inches under his chin. His large nose hung over his well-manicured mustache, complete with curled-up ends. A black welding apron hugged his chest and segmented his denim shirt into a neckpiece and 2 arms, both of which ended in fists dug into his hips, elbows out. Black jeans, black silicone gloves, and studded black boots completed his look. The escalator stopped at the top, and the elf stepped forward and positioned himself between the kitchen and his visitors.
Were he 3 feet taller, he'd actually look intimidating,
Santa mused.
What the frost do you beggars want?
His voice rasped from his throat, deeper than that of any elf Santa had ever heard, but still higher pitched than any normal-sized human man. Fiddlesticks started to speak, but Doodlesnoot pointed a gloved finger at him.
Not a word from you, Twiddledix.
Fiddlesticks's mouth hung open, and he motioned at Santa with his palms up.
It is my sincerest regret that you and I haven't spent any time together, Doodlesnoot,
Santa said.
Drop the doodle, will you? Just call me Snoot.
Santa nodded.
Very well, Snoot. As I was saying...
And cut the crap, fat man. I don't need your half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. If you had ever wanted to get to know me, you would have. I've been working, or at least I had been working, in your shack for close to 60 years. You had plenty of time, but in all that time, you hardly said 12 words to me aside from Merry Christmas. So either tell me why the frost you're here, or get out.
Santa raised an eyebrow and squinted at him.
We have a conundrum, and I was hoping you'd be able to assist us.
Let's get one thing straight. The only reason I let you holly-brain crooks into my house is because Harpic sent you over. Now I'm losing my patience, so you've got 30 seconds to tell me what you want, and then I'm throwing your walrus blubber butts out of here.
Santa appreciated his pragmatism. After all, they were short on time.
We've had an incident, and now we only have one healthy reindeer. He's a juvenile, and while he can fly, he's nowhere near ready to fly the sleigh on his own. I'm sure you're aware that it's already Christmas Eve, so we're running low on time to find a solution. Harpic said you might be able to help somehow.
Snoot folded his arms.
Oh, can he get the sleigh off the ground?
Santa glanced at Fiddlesticks, who shook his head. Then he turned back to Snoot.
The going theory is that he can't.
Jingle my bells!
Snoot's voice went flat.
You haven't even tested him yet?
He's a juvenile, Santa reiterated. Hasn't completed all of the flight training circuit yet. Even if he could lift the sleigh, it would be unprecedented for him to maintain any measure of control over it while airborne. Don't get me wrong, he's a stout specimen. But he's still too young for anything like that.
Yet you're aiming to take him out anyway.
I don't have much of a choice. We either try it with Rudolph, or we delay indefinitely, or cancel Christmas this year. You know I can't abide by either.
Snoot stroked his moustache with his thumb and forefinger.
Has he completed the micro and macro navigation segments of the training?
Assuming he's progressing through the circuit as the reindeer normally do, yes.
Then your problem is lift and propulsion. Getting the sleigh off the ground and keeping it in the air. If that reindeer can guide your sleigh tonight, then you should be set.
Santa nodded.
That could work, yes. Can you help?
With lift and propulsion? Ugh, I was on the phone with Elon Musk before you came a carol whining on my doorstep. I've got a call with the China National Space Program tomorrow, then Jeff Bezos the next day, then SpaceX again, then NASA, then...
Yes or no?
Santa asked.
Obviously, yes. I already have a functioning prototype that would perfectly solve your problem. I started working on it back in your slave shop.
Snoot eyed Fiddlesticks.
That was before Twiddledix fired me for no reason.
Liar!
Fiddlesticks pointed at him.
You were drunk on the job. Then you...
If he says so much as another word, I'm gonna deck his halls clear down to South America.
Snoot glared at Santa.
Fiddlesticks.
Santa turned to him.
Why don't you head back to the workshop and check on our progress? I'll bring Bibidoo back with me.
Fiddlesticks opened his mouth to speak, but Bibidoo shushed him.
Shh. He said you're not supposed to say anything else.
Fiddlesticks glowered at him, but he clamped his mouth shut, gave a begrudging nod, and headed out the door. As soon as the door shut behind him, a cacophony of elven profanity chorused from outside, grew fainter, then disappeared behind the roar of a snowmobile's ignition. Then the snowmobile faded into the distance as well. Snoot huffed.
I hope he crashes and gets eaten by a Yeti.
Bibidoo gasped.
Surely you don't mean that. Yeti have been extinct for 40 years.
A polar bear, then. Anything bigger than him would work.
Back to business, gentlemen.
The thought of a Yeti knocking Fiddlesticks off of his snowmobile tickled Santa's dark side. But he had more pressing thoughts to dwell on for the moment.
Snoot, you mentioned you have something that could help us.
Yes, but I'm not just gonna give it to you.
I wouldn't expect you to. I can offer you fair compensation for it, plus an additional bonus since it's the night before Christmas.
Snoot shook his head.
I have no interest in your money.
Santa tilted his head.
Then what do you want?
No amount of money could ever satiate my anger at Fiddlesticks, or you for that matter, for canning me. And besides, SpaceX, NASA, and the others are gonna pay me plenty once my deals go through.
I haven't studied your files, Snoot. I don't know if the firing was justified or not. I'm inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt, but...
Santa glanced at Bibidoo.
From what I hear, this was a repeated issue.
Snoot shrugged.
So I like my eggnog. And scotch. Or both. Mostly the scotch, with a few drops of eggnog for flavor. Whatever. Big deal. Like I always say. Got booze? Can't lose.
Well, it must have been a big enough deal, otherwise Fiddlesticks wouldn't have fired you for it.
I couldn't care less what either you or him think.
Snoot folded his arms again.
There's only one thing I want, and if you won't give it to me, I won't help you.
Santa hesitated. He had to find a way to get the sleigh airborne in order to salvage Christmas this year. But if Snoot wanted something Santa couldn't deliver, he'd already said he didn't have a choice. Nothing had changed since then. He looked at Snoot and nodded.
What is it?
Snoot's lips curled into a wry grin.
I want to come with you.
Chapter 4.
That's it?
Santa squinted at him. That wasn't what he'd been expecting.
You just want to come along?
I'll never get a better chance to run diagnostics on the prototype,
Snoot said.
Though, if you'd also be willing to fire Twiddledix, I'd take that as the bonus you mentioned earlier.
Santa shook his head.
I'm afraid I can't do that without cause.
Snoot's wry grin returned.
How about cause I asked you to?
I'm sorry, Snoot, but no.
Santa studied the elf. He'd taken Shelley out on several of his past deliveries, so bringing another person along wasn't an issue.
As for you coming along, you're certainly welcome to accompany me.
Snoot's grin widened into a full-on toothy smile. He rubbed his gloved hands together.
Excellent.
How soon can you get the prototype ready for us?
It's ready now. In fact, we can haul it back with your snowmobile.
Santa nodded.
Then let's go.
Back at the workshop, Snoot strode inside with his chin up, wearing everything he'd been wearing at home minus the coverall apron and silicone gloves, but plus a black leather coat lined with white polar bear fur and matching gloves. The other elves gawked at him, and he stood there with smug, pursed lips, still wearing his red-orange goggles. Santa smirked at the sight. If it helped save Christmas, he didn't mind Snoot's posturing. Under Snoot's direction, the other elves cracked open the crate they'd hauled from his home, removed the lid and the packing peanuts, and extracted a silver missile-shaped object about the size of Santa himself. A pair of other elves set up a curved rack on the floor amid the styrofoam peanuts, and those carrying the prototype carefully set it into the rack. Harpic scratched his head and looked at it.
What is it?
It's a rocket.
Snoot grinned at it and removed his goggles, revealing sharp blue eyes.
Powered by starlight.
So it's solar-powered?
Pellywiggle asked. Snoot shook his head.
Starlight. At nighttime. Yes, technically it's solar-powered because the sun is a star, but it's designed to derive energy from the twinkling of stars in the night sky, so you don't need to charge it in daylight. I call it the Star of Wonder. I've got a 4-way bidding war going between Elon Musk, NASA, the Chinese, and Jeff Bezos for it.
I don't understand how that makes sense scientifically. This apparatus is tiny. How can distant starlight power it enough to move the sleigh, much less itself?
Wismelder asked.
That's proprietary information, and I'm not about to disclose it to you Yuletide idiots. Not that you'd understand it even if I did.
Snoot's chin rose again. Wismelder mumbled something unintelligible about him, but Santa couldn't make out what it was.
How do we even know this monstrosity works?
Fiddlesticks eyed Snoot.
And before you tell me to shut up, remember that you're on my turf now, Snoot, and I have good reason to be concerned.
Snoot sneered at him.
Open the skylight and I'll prove it to you.
Now I know you're off your rocker horse.
Fiddlesticks scoffed and drove his knuckles into his hips.
It's been blizzarding all night. There isn't any starlight.
And now I know you're too slush-brained to know how to use the internet. There's a break in the storm headed our way right about now. So quit your blabbering and open the damn skylight!
While Bibidoo headed over to the workshop's skylight controls, Snoot opened a control panel on the side of the Star of Wonder and tapped his fingers on a touchscreen inside. Blue light, reminiscent of the white-blue light that had shone from the passage under Snoot's floor, rimmed the Star of Wonder in several places, giving it a cutting-edge tech feel. The skylight opened, revealing a glass-paned pyramid above that kept out the snow. Santa had installed it that way on purpose. What was the point of a skylight in the North Pole if it was always covered in snow?
Shut the lights off!
Snoot called. Bibidoo complied, and the entire workshop descended into darkness aside from the Star of Wonder's glow. Nothing happened at first. But sure enough, the clouds overhead broke apart, and the faint glimmer of starlight began shining into the workshop. 10 seconds later, the Star of Wonder lifted from its rack and hovered 3 feet off the ground. The same blue light radiated underneath it. Pellywiggle reached out to touch it, and Snoot smacked his hand away.
Don't even think about touching it with your disgusting glitter-covered fingers!
Snoot snapped.
It hovers. Hooray!
Fiddlesticks rolled his eyes.
Does it move forward?
And backward, Twiddledicks. Watch!
Snoot pulled a small tablet from his jacket pocket and tapped its screen. The Star of Wonder continued hovering, but another blue light formed on its rear, and it began floating forward. He tapped the screen again, and a smaller blue light shone from the rocket's nose, and it hovered backward.
This is less than 1% thrust and 3% lift. Any faster than, say, 20% either way, and the ride will probably get a bit wobbly. But otherwise, it does what you need it to do.
What if there's no starlight? What about cloud cover?
Wismelda asked.
You're not just a pretty face, Wismelda.
Snoot said.
Mostly because you're just not pretty. But also because your brain clearly functions at a higher level than the rest of these meat pie morons. The battery charges at a 2-to-1 ratio. Every 2 minutes of clear starlight charges the reserves for 1 minute. As long as we consistently fly above the clouds, we're fine.
Wismelda glowered at him from behind her bedazzled snowflake-shaped glasses.
Here endeth the presentation.
Snoot pressed his finger against the tablet, and the Star of Wonder sank down onto its rack. He tucked the tablet into his pocket and sneered at Fiddlesticks again.
How long will it take you to connect it to the sleigh?
Santa asked.
With all hands decking the halls?
Snoot squinted one eye.
Probably an hour. Maybe 2, tops. A little rewiring there, some reprogramming here.
Get started. We're short on time.
You remember our agreement?
Snoot asked. Santa nodded.
You're welcome to join me on the sleigh tonight, but pack lightly.
He faced Fiddlesticks and the other elves.
Listen up! Priority 1 is retrofitting the sleigh for immediate takeoff. You're the most brilliant minds in the world, so work together and get this done. Do whatever Doodle Snoot tells you to do. Understood?
The elves nodded and gave a Christmas cheer. Then they got to work. As Santa headed out of the workshop, Snoot said from behind him,
The first thing I need is a drink. Someone get me a hard cider. Extra cinnamon.
An hour later, Santa tried to check on Shelley, but she was still locked in that guest bedroom. When he knocked, she told him in no uncertain terms to go away. Instead, he used the time to prepare everything he needed for making his trip around the world, including putting on his traditional Christmas outfit, including his insulated red pants. He had everything ready to go except for his jacket, and he couldn't find it anywhere. Stained as it was, he'd need it for the trip anyway. It was the warmest one he owned. Careening through the Earth's upper atmosphere was no joke temperature-wise. He knocked on Shelley's door again.
What?
She called. Santa bristled at her tone, but he kept focused on the task at hand.
Do you still have my rabbit fur coat?
Yes?
May I have it, please? We've found a solution for the sleigh, we think, and I'll be leaving soon.
You'll have it by the time you need to leave. Come back before you go. It'll be ready then.
Shelley,
I said you'd have it before you leave.
She snapped.
It's not that. I wanted to ask if we could talk before I leave, and I'd prefer not to do that through a locked door.
An eternity of silent nights passed between them, then she spoke.
I have to finish this for you.
Finish what? I thought you were trying to clean it.
I'll explain later, but no, we won't have time to talk before you go. I have to finish this.
Santa sighed. How could he make things right if she wouldn't even talk to him?
Fine.
He inhaled half a plate of Christmas cookies just to spite her. Then he left the house again. Santa headed to the stable first, which had finally been cleared of the reindeer carcasses and most of the associated gore, and checked with Harpic and Quiniglow on their progress with Rudolph, and found all 3 of them ready to go. He asked them to accompany him to the workshop. When they arrived, they found the sleigh inside, surrounded by dozens of elves, each of them working feverishly on something. Snoot, no longer wearing his coat but again wearing his goggles and black silicone gloves, tweaked a wrench on something on the side of the sleigh. As Santa approached, thoughts of Shelley invaded his mind again, and he struggled to put them out of his mind. He couldn't help but be bothered by the situation. When he noticed a string of white Christmas lights lying next to the sleigh, the sight of Snoot incorporating some cheer into the sleigh's design both encouraged Santa and took his mind off Shelley.
You must be nearly ready if you're tinkering with the sleigh's cosmetics,
he said. Snoot turned back.
We are nearly ready, but this isn't for cosmetics. It's designed to show us how much energy is left. When the light shines at full brightness, we're at full battery capacity, or about an hour's charge. As they dim, we'll have less charge. Christmas lights use barely any energy, so this was both more festive and practical than installing a higher-tech interface.
Rather than adding commentary about the light's decorative nature, Santa asked,
The charge only lasts an hour?
Like I said, it's only a prototype. I should get enough data from this test run to expand the capacity.
Snoot pulled a flask from his pocket and took a swig. Then he tossed it into the sleigh.
And it's not like we're gonna fall out of the sky. As long as there's starlight, we'll stay airborne.
Snoot curled the excess strand of lights, about 10 feet total by Santa's estimation, and tacked it to the sleigh with a staple gun. He took the opposite end, marked by a white casing hastily wrapped in white electric tape, and plugged it into a port in the sleigh that hadn't been there when Santa left. The lights immediately glowed about halfway to their fullest brightness.
There! It works! There's a matching strand on the other side of the sleigh, too. The blizzard picked back up, so we didn't get much charge from the skylight being open while we worked. But we should be okay for now.
Snoot rubbed his gloved hands together and stood up.
Let me give you a tour of the new sleigh.
Please do.
Not a whole lot has changed. You'll still hitch your reindeer up front, and he'll still steer the sleigh.
Snoot pointed to a blank touchscreen on the sleigh's dashboard that hadn't been there before.
You've got controls on your dash for thrust and lift, but you'll still need your whip to make the reindeer turn left, right, and so on. Since this is only a prototype, there's no navigation software installed. I wouldn't have had enough time to program it correctly anyway. Because of the modifications we made to merge the sleigh with the Star of Wonder, the sleigh is bigger, which I'm sure you've noticed by now. Longer, wider, more seating too, so if you ever need to take anyone with you, you'll have more room for that now. Still plenty of room for the presents too, so don't worry about that.
Santa's eyebrows rose. Thinking about Shelley had distracted him from noticing that the sleigh had almost doubled in size. Landing it on smaller roofs was already rough enough at its original size, so this would prove interesting. Then again, without a full team of reindeer, maybe it would even out. A pang of regret stabbed his gut. The image of Donna's ferocious, decayed face chomping at him plagued Santa's memory. He pushed it out of his mind and blinked back into the present.
As long as the essentials are covered, I can make adjustments.
The rails underneath didn't get changed, but the Star of Wonder is mounted between them and under your seat, so that got raised up a bit as a result. The propulsion system should let you go forward or backward without burning the reindeer's tail off, but you'll want to take it easy on reverse movements all the same. That just about does it, I think. Any questions?
Santa noticed a chrome tube-like thing between the driver's seat and the passenger seat. It looked almost big enough for Shelley to stick her arm into. He pointed to it.
What's that?
Snoot looked.
Oh, that. Give me a minute. Here.
He ran around the corner and came back with Cherry in his hands. Snoot hopped into the sleigh and tucked her into the tube until only her stock stuck out.
I overheard what happened in the stable, so I figured you might want this along just in case.
Snoot grinned at him.
That's very kind of you.
Santa reached past him and pulled Cherry from the tube.
But I'm certain the danger has passed by this point.
Suit yourself. I wouldn't want to go out there unarmed.
Snoot motioned toward Rudolph.
You never know if he's going to come down with it too.
Santa turned toward Rudolph. He again lay on his pile of discarded stuffing, head down, pleasantly but quietly drawing breaths that made his flank expand and contract at steady intervals. He now wore a full-sized reindeer harness, rather than one of the training ones, complete with the customary sleigh bells, but Harpic and Quiniglow had tightened it to its smallest setting in order to fit it to him. It would work, though. They'd found a way to make this whole setup function, and in less time than Santa had expected. They'd be able to make Christmas happen in spite of the catastrophe with all of the other reindeer.
We have to. I appreciate your concern, Snoot. I'll take it under advisement.
Santa faced him again.
How long until we can lift off?
Maybe another 15 minutes if these sugar plum idiots can keep up.
Snoot motioned toward the rest of the elves. Santa nodded.
Very good. I'll complete my final preparations, and I'll meet you with the sleigh outside the workshop. Have Harpic and Quiniglow hitch Rudolph to the front of the sleigh, and Fiddlesticks will make sure the other elves load the toys as well.
Snoot gave him an unenthusiastic thumbs up and resumed working. Santa leaned Cherry against the wall in a corner of the workshop Then he thought better of it.
No one puts Cherry in the corner.
Instead, he set her atop one of the shelves inside the workshop and headed to the back of the workshop toward the vault. There was something inside that he needed to make his delivery schedule possible. A massive vault door the color of silver bells loomed before him. He pressed his hand against a flat panel to the right, and it scanned his handprint. A heavy clank sounded from within, and the vault door popped open. Santa pulled on it until he had enough space to enter. The inside looked like a typical bank vault, spacious and lined with safety deposit boxes, except for a few key differences. In one corner, a large containment tank with glass in a small center portion about chest high contained a brain, healthy and pink, suspended in a pale green liquid. A series of electrodes protruded from the brain, and connecting wires snaked into the metal framing above and below the glass. An overhead LED cast a hard light on the brain, creating a deep shadow beneath it. A placard on the tank read, "Jim Henson's Brain." Santa grinned. In exchange for Muppet toy ideas, Santa had preserved Jim's brain function following his death and transferred it into the containment tank. Was it ideal? No, but it had kept Jim alive all the same. And if modern technology someday advanced enough to bring him back to life in a new body, well, they had his brain all ready to go. In the corner opposite of Jim's brain, another containment tank held the frozen body of Jimmy Hoffa, a conciliatory gift that had come in an unmarked box from Detroit many years earlier. But being Santa Claus, he knew exactly who'd sent it, of course. A tank to the left of Jimmy sat empty, but a sign tacked to the top read, "Reserved for Hillary Clinton." The hundreds of safety deposit boxes within the vault contained a wild range of treasures lost to mankind, from the infamous De Beers diamond to Lance Armstrong's cancerous testicle. But one box in particular housed the timepiece, the item Santa valued most. It was a gift from Father Time himself, specifically so Santa could do what he needed to do every year. He pressed his palm against the flat panel on the door that contained that particular safety deposit box. The panel scanned his hand, and the door popped open just as the vault had, this time with a small click rather than a loud clunk. As Santa followed the access protocols, retinal scan, blood test, and 3 others, he ran through the night's events in his head. He'd killed 2 undead reindeer, who had killed the rest of his reindeer team, and all but ruined his white coat in the process. He'd had at least 2 arguments with Shelley. Actually, that was a low number compared to a normal day. He'd also convinced a disgruntled former employee to retrofit the sleigh so Santa and Rudolph could get airborne to make his Christmas deliveries. Now, all that remained, aside from loading the sleigh for departure, was retrieving the timepiece. With its power, he could slow time enough to complete his deliveries before the sun rose across the globe. But when Santa opened the deposit box lid and reached for the timepiece, it wasn't there. Chapter 5. Terror seized Santa's plaque-choked heart, and perspiration beaded on his forehead. The vault interior skyrocketed from temperate to inferno. Santa's breathing quickened, and his mouth and throat went dry. He dug deeper into the box, cursed his thick fingers, but still found nothing. He ducked to look under the box, which stayed suspended in its spot above his head. Still nothing. He rose too abruptly and smacked the back of his head on its underside. Pain split his noggin, and he battled the urge to curse. Santa stepped away from the box and rubbed his head.
Where is it?
He hadn't removed it from the box since last year. At least not that he could recall. His memory wasn't always the sharpest, but with something as important as the timepiece, he knew he wouldn't have used it since Christmas Eve of last year. Behind the box. It had to be. Santa yanked the box free of its supports and exposed the compartment that housed it. He peered inside and probed with his fingers. Nothing. His guts sank to his swollen ankles. He reached deeper inside and patted around just to make sure. It wasn't there.
Where is it?
He growled. No one else had access to the vault, not even Shelley or Fiddlesticks. No one. He must have left it somewhere. It was the only possible explanation. Santa slammed the box lid shut and shoved it back into the compartment. It hammered the back wall with a metallic clap.
Where is it?
Santa shouted. He shot a glare at Jimmy Hoffa, his mind wild with accusations that made no sense. Jimmy was frozen. Jim Henson was only a brain with no body, and Hillary Clinton wasn't even in her containment tank yet, so that ruled her out. Probably. Santa cursed under his breath. Without that timepiece, he'd never complete his deliveries on time. All of his scramblings to salvage Christmas had amounted to nothing. Unless Snoot's Star of Wonder could move at the speed of light or bend time, he'd never make it. And even if it could, Santa couldn't hold up against those conditions, let alone poor Rudolph. He swore again, but he could do nothing else aside from continue to look elsewhere. He stormed out of the vault, pushed the heavy door shut, and waited a beat until the lock clanked. Within moments, Santa arrived on the main floor of the workshop. He yelled,
Listen up, everyone! We've got an emergency! I need everyone to stop what you're doing and help me comb the premises for a small golden pocket watch. It has an engraving of the North Star on the front. Whoever finds it gets the next 3 months off!
Every elf in the workshop dropped their work and scurried around the workshop. They tore through piles of toys and barrels of parts. They searched under tables and in nooks and crannies. They even got out ladders and searched the upper shelves that lined some of the walls and peeked behind the Christmas lights mounted all around the room. All the while, Snoot reclined in the sleigh, nursing a glass of amber liquid with a smile. The thought that Snoot had stolen the timepiece crossed Santa's mind. But he pushed the thought away as unfeasible. Snoot may have been a disgruntled former employee, but he'd done nothing to indicate that he'd be interested in or capable of heisting the timepiece from the vault, or that he even knew about it to begin with. As the elves searched, a brilliant white light flashed outside the workshop. Harpic had climbed a ladder near one of the windows. He shrieked, clutched his eyes and fell from the ladder. But instead of his head pulling a Humpty Dumpty on the workshop floor, he landed in a cart full of golden tinsel. Santa rushed over to him.
Harpic, are you all right?
Wide-eyed and trembling, Harpic sputtered.
There's something out there.
Santa yanked him out of the tinsel cart and set him on his feet.
What did you see?
I don't even know. A man. He just appeared with 2 polar bears and a flash of light.
Santa straightened his back. Polar bears?
Is he wearing a red shirt?
Harpic blinked several times.
I think it was blue. Had some sort of pattern on it.
Well then, it's not Barry, the marketing rep from Coca-Cola. We finished filming the last round of commercials in July anyway.
Whoever it was, he'd scared the candlelights out of Harpic. Santa grabbed Cherry from the shelf where he'd left her and headed toward the workshop door. The blizzard had waned again, but the Arctic cold still bit at Santa's nose, ears, and fingers, reminding him how much he missed his coat. As Harpic had described, a man stood in the middle of Santa's frozen, snowy lawn. 2 massive polar bears flanked him, one upright and nearly 10 feet tall, and the other on all 4s. Both of them remained perfectly still, as if they were statues. The man had a long white beard, white hair, and unnaturally pale skin. Were it not for the man's navy blue Hawaiian shirt and khaki shorts, he would have blended in with the surrounding terrain just as well as the polar bears. He stood ankle-deep in the snow, grinning at Santa. Father Time. Confused, Santa lowered his shotgun as the elves crowded around him.
What are you doing here?
It's a pleasure to see you as well, Nicholas. You're looking well, jolly and fat as ever.
Father Time gave no indication of being cold, despite the sub-zero temperatures and the cutting wind whipping around them. The elements didn't affect him. As the Lord of Time and Space, not much of anything affected him. Santa ignored Father Time's jab at his weight. Something was awry. He needed to get to the bottom of it. He doubted it was a coincidence that the timepiece had gone missing just before Father Time's appearance.
What brings you to my home, Father?
Ah, I hate it when you call me that. Makes me sound old or good. Like I'm a priest or something. I may be old, but we both know I'm never good.
Father Time giggled and his voice took on 3 dissonant, high-pitched tones.
You've known me for years, Nicholas. You know I prefer to be called Time.
Santa grinned.
I didn't want to be rude. I haven't seen you for close to a decade.
Rude?
Father Time scoffed and waved his hand.
Pah! We're old friends! Among the oldest of friends around. With only a few notable exceptions, of course.
Then tell me, old friend, what brings you out here on Christmas Eve of all nights?
Santa almost didn't want to know. He'd been friends with Father Time, only in the loosest sense of the word.
Oh! Was just passing through the neighborhood. Spent a couple weeks down south in the Caribbean. Figured I'd swing up here. Check out how bad this global warming stuff really is. Ooh.
He said.
You know, the old line, going to and fro in the earth, and walking up and down in it. That's one of the benefits of being me. I've had the universe more or less automated for the last 4,000 plus years, so I can bounce in and out wherever and whenever I want. It's quite nice.
Father Time giggled again, but he stopped at the sound of a door creaking behind Santa. His white, irisless eyes fixed on something over Santa's shoulder. Santa turned back. Shelley stood in the doorway of their home, her arms folded, wearing a frown and a heavy coat over her sweater and jeans.
Oh, it's so lovely out here, wouldn't you say?
Father Time didn't giggle this time, but his voice took on a haunting tone that prickled at Santa's nerves. Santa faced Father Time again.
I don't mean to be forward, but we have a lot of work to do if we're going to get tonight's deliveries out on time.
Father Time laughed a droning laugh and shook his head. He clomped through the snow towards Santa, who noticed he wore only flip-flops despite the weather. He stopped 5 feet away.
Now, Nicholas, we both know that's not entirely true. The laws of time and space, laws that I manage, mind you, may not apply to you as strictly. But they certainly prohibit your little sleigh from moving fast enough to accomplish that sort of feat.
Father Time now stood about a foot away from Santa, and his lips spread into a smile of jagged teeth.
That is, without a little assistance from yours truly.
Santa didn't say anything. He just stared at Father Time's pupils, the only black within the pools of white that formed his eyes.
It has come to my attention that you've lost something very important, haven't you, Nicholas?
When Santa still didn't respond, Father Time continued.
Oh, it's as if it just vanished from your precious vault. Poof, gone. A Christmas Eve conundrum.
Santa bristled. Enough of this.
I'd like it back, please.
Father Time recoiled with a mock gasp and touched his hand to his chest.
I don't believe my ancient ears. What makes you think I would have it?
Please, Time. You're one of only a handful of beings in the universe who could have possibly taken it out of that vault.
Santa raised Cherry, so her barrel rested against his shoulder, pointing up into the sky. He didn't do it specifically to intimidate Father Time. The shotgun probably couldn't even harm him, but he hoped it might anyway. It was a whopper of a gun.
I don't know how, but...
And I'm certainly not going to tell you.
Father Time interjected. Santa's eyes narrowed.
But I know it was you. Aside from my wife, you're the only person who even knew I had it.
Because I gave it to you.
Father Time's wicked grin returned.
Oh, that still doesn't prove I took it.
Santa shook his head.
I'm not interested in playing games, Time. I don't even particularly care why you took it. I'd just like it back, please.
Father Time smirked, lowered his chin, and blinked a few times, almost batting his eyes.
Oh, you're no fun in your old age, Nicholas. Course, you weren't exactly a bag of confetti when you were a saint either, but still, you're so droll, so serious. Why not have a little more fun in life?
My fun begins at sunrise tomorrow when I can kick back in my living room and watch football while kids across the globe open presents with their families and loved ones. Until then, I've got work to do, and you're keeping me from doing it.
Santa exhaled a long breath and extended his hand.
Now I'm going to ask you again nicely. Please give me back the timepiece.
Whoa! Look at you, Nicholas. Trying not to get flustered, trying not to resurrect the Nicholas of old. The medieval version that made war on the enemies of the faith and gave gifts to the families of those you slew on battlefields across the earth. Now that version of you was exciting.
Santa had worked long and hard to atone for his actions so many centuries ago. He'd totally revamped his life in the process, and he'd given up that violent lifestyle for good. For Father Time to bring it up now. Something tugged on Santa's pocket. He looked down and saw Bibidoo standing there, hugging his jacket tight across his chest.
What's he saying, boss? The elf asked. What's he talking about?
Santa started to answer, but Father Time cut him off.
I don't expect he would have told you. I mean, you're only his slaves. Why would he tell you of his dark history?
Santa gritted his teeth.
You're misrepresenting.
It appears not much has changed, Nicholas.
Father Time nodded toward Cherry.
Different age, different weapons of warfare, but the same old Saint Nicholas.
Santa scowled at him. A millennium-old rage flared inside his chest, and he clenched his teeth tighter. He felt the eyes of every single elf on the property boring into him, but he kept his focus fixed on Father Time.
Oh, well, you're too fat now anyway.
Father Time produced a golden pocket watch and held it up. Even from a distance, Santa could see the image of the North Star etched into its casing. The timepiece.
This is what you're missing, isn't it?
Father Time taunted.
You know it is.
Santa growled.
I want it back.
Father Time clutched his chest as he had before and stepped back.
What happened to please, Nicholas? You were so cordial just a moment ago.
That was before you stole something that belongs to me.
Nonsense!
Father Time dismissed Santa's words with a wave and closed his fist around the timepiece.
It was never yours. I was merely loaning it to you, and now I've taken back what belongs to me.
Santa's jaw tensed. Father Time tisked.
Aren't you supposed to be especially merry this time of year? You know, joy to the world and all of that.
What do you want?
Father Time displayed his jagged smile again, and his eerie eyes looked past Santa.
What makes you think I want anything?
Santa glanced back at Shelley. Then he refocused on Father Time. Does he?
Fine! You got me.
Father Time shrugged and beamed.
There is something I want.
Santa hesitated to ask, but he had to know. He had to get this moving along so he could make his deliveries on time.
What?
Father Time pointed past Santa.
Her.
Santa looked back at Shelley. He turned back slowly to face Father Time.
What are you talking about?
I just told you. How can I put it into terms? You'll understand.
Father Time grinned at them. His voice sing-songy, he said,
Ooh, all I want for Christmas is her. Your wife. God, Mariah Carey is such a treasure.
Father Time's request stunned Santa to silence. But he wasn't wholly surprised. Over the last several decades, he'd noticed Father Time's increasing interest in Shelley whenever their paths happened to cross. He hadn't thought much of it, though. After all, his own eyes had wandered a time or two, but this revelation of Father Time's interest had gone too far. Way too far. The next thing Santa knew, Shelley stood at his side, braving the blizzard to assert her presence. Had she taken a liking to Father Time's request? Was she moving forward to go with him? Santa's heart rate accelerated. They'd endured hard times of late, but surely things hadn't deteriorated that far. Or had they? She looked at him through the furious, stinging Arctic wind, reached for his hand, and intertwined her gloved fingers with his. That was all the reassurance he could have hoped for. Santa exhaled a shaky breath and centered his attention on Father Time. He gave Shelley's hand a squeeze and said, "No." Father Time's wispy white eyebrows rose.
Oh, you realize you're dooming Christmas mornings all over the world, don't you?
Santa swallowed hard.
For now.
Multi-toned, dissonant laughter split the cold air.
Oh, no. It's not just for now. It's from now on. This little holiday you've laid claim to ends tonight. You can't do this without the timepiece.
Santa looked at Shelley again. For the first time in decades, he actually saw a small flame of love behind her blue eyes.
We'll make adjustments. We'll find a way.
Look,
Father Time held up his pasty hands.
I'll make it easy on you. Just give her to me for 10 years, and then I'll give her back. By then, I'll be bored with her. I might even send her back early. You two have been married for more than a few lifetimes. Surely you get sick of each other, don't you? And what's 10 years to us? We're immortal.
No deal. Santa shook his head. As if it weren't bad enough that Father Time was asking for Shelley at all, now he was trying to barter for her like she was some sort of commodity. It took all of Santa's energy to keep from lashing out at him right then and there.
Not a chance.
Fine. 1 year. Think of it as a healthy little vacation from each other.
Father Time approached their position, stepping closer with each new proposal.
No.
1 month?
No.
A week?
This was well beyond absurd. Santa growled at him.
What part of no don't you understand?
All right.
Father Time held up his hands and leaned toward them, well into their personal space.
1 night. I've got to have her for 1 night.
His eyes fixed on Shelley.
And I guarantee it'll be the wildest night of your life.
Shelley slapped him with as much gusto as Santa had ever seen.
You're disgusting!
Father Time rubbed his cheek and blinked several times. He cocked his white head to the side and licked his cracked lips.
I certainly won't deny that.
You're revolting! You sicken me!
Shelley continued, obstinate.
How can you think I'd ever...
All right. I get the point.
Father Time held up his hand.
Forget I even asked.
He pointed at Santa.
That is, forget I even offered. I'll just hold on to the timepiece and you'll have to deal with the consequences.
Shelley gave Santa's hand a squeeze. He stared down Father Time.
Fine. Because there's no way in hell I'd give her to you or anyone else. We'll find another way.
Father Time laughed and shook his head. Without another word, he turned away and headed over to the motionless polar bears. He patted each of their backs, then he faced Santa, Shelley, and the elves.
Suit yourselves.
Father Time added in a sing-song voice,
On the first day of Christmas, Father Time gave to me a polar bear that's a zombie. 2 of them, actually.
He gave a wink, then a white light flashed and Father Time vanished. The polar bears started moving. First they animated, and then they began to decay. Pieces of their fur fell off, then the skin underneath exposing bloody open sores. Before long, they resembled Donner and Blitzen, hulks of undead flesh. Only this time they were alpha predators, not herbivores. Both polar bears stood up on their hind legs, rising to their full 10-foot heights, and roared into the Arctic night. Then they charged straight towards Santa, Shelley, and the elves.